Hello everyone, my name is Med Scorpion, and welcome back to Destiny 2. Now, it seems like some of the servers might have leveled out a little bit. I managed to log in eventually after I recognized that an update needed to happen before it said servers were going to be working. But aside from that, I basically got in and haven't at least had any stuttering or error coding just yet. Haven't actually gotten any multi-leveled activities, if you know what I'm saying, but at the same time, it seems to be working just fine for now. On that same note, though, trying to get into the rest of the world, starting with the Nightfall. So the Nightfall this week is an annoying one in the form of Mars Battleground. Now, there is a little bit, supposedly there is easier ways to do it than there was before. The supposed, I don't know if there's a cheese like there was on Europa, but at least this one is at least easier than it was around the first time, supposedly. Because, according to one of my friends, it did get nerfed. But the assorted, the assorted modifiers being a rainbow of elemental shields, barrier and unstoppable champions, solar threat for incoming solar damage being increased, the usual Grandmaster modifiers of extinguish, limited revives, fire pit for acolytes spawning fire pools on defeat, chaff for no radar, and then the usual seasonal overcharge plus strand and void surge and overcharged machine gun, so maybe machine gun will be the play for this. In addition to that, it is actually a first time for the week as we are at week 6 of the season, which means this is the last weapon of the rotation, which if you've been paying attention to my previous videos, you would know is actually the recently added Prey Astyanax 4, which is a new solar precision frame bow, which is Nightfall specific, which means of course it can also be adept. It also has 3 origin traits because it also has the wildcard trait being a cassoid bow allegedly. And everything else, there is supposedly a few rolls on it that might replace Strident Whistle, or at least be an addition to something greater than Strident Whistle. Considering looking at the stats, they are pretty much matching, even though I know there's not many ways to customize a bow. But moving on from there, in terms of Gambit, there isn't really anything going on in here, although I didn't see the no Gambit booster. And then in terms of Crucible, because no Iron Banner as usual, we will have Trials this weekend. Whether or not we'll have a Trials boosted rep, still to be seen, but of course going forward. And then the rotation matches being Zone Control and Team Scorched. And I think Crucible Labs is still Checkmate Control, so that is still available for the Crucible Lab modes. But then going throughout the rest of the world for our rotations, currently the weekly farming raid is actually for King's Fall, which means that King's Fall Master Mode is once again available, and if you want any of the adepts for it, you can do challenges for them. As well as it being recovery-focused armor, all challenge modes are active, so if you want to either get Touch of Malice or just get adept weapons from the raid, you can go ahead and go for that now. In addition to that, while we're there, the weekly rotating exotic mission is currently Seraph Shield. So if you wanted anything from Season 19, whether it be weapons, armor, or anything else, including the pretty solid anti-barrier pulse rifle Revision 0, I would recommend going for that right now. But aside from that, in terms of our rotation dungeon, let's see, Throne World, Cosmodrome, I believe it is Grasp of Avarice. Yes, Grasp of Avarice for our farming dungeon, which means, of course, Master Mode is back, and you can farm the Artifice Armor in case you're looking for some better stat rolls on everything else. But then, going throughout the raids throughout the rest of the world, for the Dreaming City, the current challenge mode is the Keep Out challenge. And then for Garden of Salvation on the Moon, the current challenge is 0 to 100, which is Final Boss challenge. Basically, you have to fill the deposits of blue or orange motes within seconds of each other in a rapid phase. Then for Deepstone Cryptid is currently the Copies of Copies challenge, which is a pretty easy one to do. Basically, you just have to delete Atrax without deleting any of his clones. And then going to the Throne World for Vow of the Disciple. Currently challenge it is Looping Catalyst, which is Rolk challenge. Basically, do not lose the leeching buff. If you actually have a solid phase and never lose the leeching buff, you can do that challenge pretty easy. And then wrapping around to Vault of Glass, it is currently Ensemble's Refrain, which is Atheon challenge, if I recall. Basically, only one person is allowed to break every oracle in a wave of oracles. Then going forward as well, Crota's End. Currently, Master Mode is once again available. It was released midweek. It is currently Strength-focused armor this week. The challenge being Precarious Balance, which is the Bridge challenge. I forget what needs to be done. I believe it is, it's either you have to kill the sword bearers on the other side, or it is that you cannot cross while the bridge is fully built, so you will require a little bit of jumping. Included modifiers being Arc and Solar Shields. Master modifiers it says all 3 champions, but at the same time, I didn't see any overloads in this at all. Then overcharged weapons as usual, Strand and Void, as well as a overcharged fusion rifle buff. So there you go for Crota's End Master on second encounter challenge. Now, once again, as well, if you didn't know, the weapons linked to it are random, because this was weapons that I got from all 3 of my things. I got the machine gun, the swordbreaker, and Fang of Ear, all from first encounter challenge. It is all entirely random the full way through, so don't expect one encounter to have something else. Just go ahead and assume that a random will drop at any case. It's just not limited based on encounter. It will literally be any adept if you actually manage to make it through. Then into seasonal stuff. Getting into the season. Now, I don't know it. Let's see. Legendary Spire, Savathun. Modifiers being Void Threat, Barrier Overload, Overcharged Weapon, Strand Surge, Void Surge, and Overcharged Rocket Launcher. And of course, Equipment Lock. And I don't know if there's any sort of specific setup for what you're going to be going through, but there's that. And of course, continuing story as usual. And then just starting back to old seasonal stuff, Legendary Salvage Mission is currently Fallen, Site Security, Site Reliability, Engineering, and Urgotha the Taken Ogre, as well as Valko Or to be hiding in the background. And while we get on to the topic of everything seasonal, there's of Eternity. Current Legend mode is the Hive, Fallen, and Vows to Arc for Legendary mode setups. Now, of course, just as a reminder, if you were still into fishing back during that old season, currently it is all 3 zones are in at least increased activity. I don't know if they are double exotic farming like there was that one week. They're getting you better access to the Wicked Implement quest, but in case you just needed exotic fish, there is increased activity in all 3 zones, so if you still need to collect any exotics or just want to farm out your bait and get some extra exotics along the way, that is currently available as well, and it probably will be available until we lose fishing come final shape, and that's assumed, it's not confirmed. That's just how it usually is. And then going to Neptune as well. Currently, the weekly farming mission is First Contact, which is the first mission in the Nightfall campaign. Pretty easy one to farm, pretty short, so it's not that bad in case you just want to get some foils or shards. Then the weekly incursion zone is the Liming Harbor, which means, of course, whenever the freaking terminal zone is here, that won't be there. But at the same time, Partition is the hard reset, which is the first one, the Sparrow section, that we did the first week of Nightfall when it came back around, way back when. To that respect, I still don't think, just double checking while we're there, Root of Nightmare still doesn't have a weekly challenge for some reason. Even though I thought maybe it would have been fixed when Master Crota came out, but still not, it seems. But that note as well, just double checking with everything seasonal, our current seasonal weekly challenges are as follows for week 6 of 10. Basically complete week 6 of the weekly story. Luminary 3 for mastering the light by defeating combatants with arc, void, and solar damage. Earn bonus progress with combatants' subclass abilities, as well as volatile, blind, or scorched. Then as well, Sympathetic Magic for defeating combatants in Savathun Spire using damage that matches your active subclass. That seems easy nowadays. Bone Breaker for Crush Lucent Hive Ghosts anywhere in the Throne Room. Bonus progress during Season Witch activity. That should be pretty easy. It's literally just killing Hive Guardians. And then Mod Collector for unlocking all 12 artifact mods. If you've been playing throughout the season well enough, you should already have it done. But in case you didn't know what it is, basically you have to unlock every single one of your artifact options in this season's artifact. And then with the last couple, Trial by Firing Squad, which is basically winning multiple rounds of trials, will give you a guaranteed weapon, so it won't rotate or match anything, and it won't be adept, but if you just want a drop of a weapon that is currently in the rotation, that is a good one to do in case you can win rounds, but you can't win games. And then Calibrated Long Range for using pulse rifles, bows, and trace rifles. Trace rifles long range, question mark? But of course, bonus progress granted for defeated guardians. And then Heavy Hardware for getting final blows with heavy ammo in ritual activities. Bonus progress for machine gun final blows or defeated guardians in terms of Crucible or Gambit. And with that, then we need to check in with Banshee and Ada for all of our weekly stuff, because that's pretty much everything on the mainstream for our weekly rotations. And of course, keep in mind that Crota will be the weekly dungeon until the final, or the weekly raid with all the masters until the next Final Shape one comes out. So for Banshee, his weapons on the front page in terms of old gear, Whispering Slab from Season 11. Pretty solid bow back from him in the day. It's a weird view model just because, I mean, look at it. But at the same time, still left behind just because of an absence of a origin trait and still very old perks all the way back from over 10 seasons ago. Then we also have Shattered Siphon from Season 14, which is Season Seraph. Decent enough machine gun. This roll is pretty meh, especially because snapshot sights, but of course it is still old. If you want it for the collection, I wouldn't blame you, but at the same time, no origin trait and very old perks, not exactly up to date. Same thing for Night Watch from Season 11, a very solid scout rifle from back in the day, but it is still held back by possibly just quite old perks and a lack of an origin trait, especially when the other Reckoning weapons came back, and they had an origin trait even when this one is in the same set. And then we also have Escape Velocity, which is a rebranded submachine gun from Season 10, which, even though it has a gunsmith make, it is still old, but this is a unique submachine gun because while it is a 900 lightweight, it also is one of the last things that have options in scopes. So if you liked your multi-mock and can't get that around Iron Banner, this is essentially what multi-mock was originally. Then, as well, we have Widow's Bite, which, once again, very old, no origin trait, Season 11. If you want it for the collection or just enjoy the look or the name of it, go for it, but at the same time, this weapon is really lacking, especially next to Irukandji or other Vice Scout snipers in the game. Then in terms of his updated stuff, we have Lunalata 4B, a stasis bow, which I've vouched for this one several times in case you wanted a weird kind of thing for a stasis build. While Vice Stinger doesn't exactly do much for you, at the same time, headstone on this bow is pretty good, especially since I think most people, when they're running bows, just kind of gravitate towards headshots. Then we also have Pizzicato 22, which is another Suros SMG that I've mentioned multiple times. Just not exactly worth it in any market except for Crucible. It's kind of hard to vouch for it, personally. Then we also have Funnel Web, which is, of course, a fan favorite from most of the Destiny community, even if I think it's a pea shooter. Pretty solid gun, although at the same time, most of these perks are not worth it. And most people probably prefer that all three of these were craftable. But speaking of craftable, Amit AR2, the gun that broke Destiny for a whole weekend. While this roll isn't exactly great, of course, I would definitely recommend getting this thing crafted because there are several good perk options. I would recommend this to anyone that is looking for a solid starter gun that needs something that is kind of all around, especially when anti-barrier auto seems more and more common these days. Then we also have Typhon GL5, which is, while it's not craftable, I wish it was, is a pretty solid grenade launcher, pretty solid perks, and of course being stasis, it also applies to Diamond Lance builds and everything like that. With choke clip as well, it could work for you. And then Taipan 4FR, the old faithful fusion rifle in terms of damage. Well, this roll isn't exactly great. Of course, if you can craft it, you would be much better off in terms of a just standard go-to damage weapon in Destiny and Endgame. And to wrap everything up, this does seem like another random armor set available for anyone who gets in there. It is pretty bland, and who knows about the stats, but the stats haven't exactly been miraculous here. High spikes, but not exactly high stats. But then for our shaders, we have Vitrified Duality from Season of the Dawn, which is a pretty solid look if you're looking for a partial chrome camo-like thing. Because while there is chrome, it does add some splotches to your armor. And then we also have New Pacific Horizon Worn, or New Pacific Rush Worn, which is one of those shaders that made you want to look like you were an old hand on a planet, but as well were kind of run down. Then we also have the Dead Orbit Resurrection, which is one of the many black and white shaders that Dead Orbit has. But while it's not exactly anything to go for here, in terms of this is more black than anything, I'm wondering what's happened to Quicksilver because it's being applied to a shader but got turned purple. Maybe this ornament just doesn't shade well. Then on that note, that is pretty much everything for the reset, and of course I'll be covering the story and Eververse separately in its own respective videos, and stay tuned for when those come out. Apologies I am late because I would have been on time, but at the same time, Destiny didn't tell me an update was out, it just kept telling me the servers were down. My name is Matt Scorpion, I will see you in the next video.